This is the fourth video in a series about using infused sulfur as a cure for many afflictions that involve the same root cause, ingrown hair. As I learn more about how to treat this condition, I am sharing my findings so that anyone may benefit. I am not a credentialed doctor, so seek alternative medical advice before using any of the ideas you may find here. Although some of this information is repeated from my earlier work, there is much that is new. This is the video that I tried to do. This is Tips and Techniques 4, where I got totally shut down and was not able to get enough. I wasn't able to finish what I wanted to do. I had to quit. That's why I had to put that last video on, so we'll see how this one goes. I don't know, but apparently I've been trying to do this. I don't know, it looks like they don't like this video. Because I had to fight them tooth and nail to get this one done. Even now, I'm trying to redo it. And it's ridiculous what I have to go through. I'm like, I have this remote now that I've had to buy so I can fight them. Because that's what I have to do. So, I didn't put my toaster up this time, so I may end up regretting it. I don't know yet. We'll see how it goes. So, before I start getting into really what I wanted this video to be about, and this is kind of new, I didn't really have it in my last one, but I definitely want to get this part in. I want to talk some about the use of alcohol. Specifically, drinking alcohol, booze, ethanol alcohol, in regards to doing this treatment. In my opinion, using alcohol is really the last thing that you want to do while doing this treatment because of the dehydration factor, and I don't want you guys to end up with a cirrhosis of the liver, ruin your renal system, this and that. But, and this is a big one, in the beginning, when I was doing this treatment, I had to use it because I was doing it differently than I do now. I was actually doing it in the showers, lathering myself up and coming out, and it was miserable. It was painful. I don't recommend it doing that way, and I use it dry now. You'll have to watch my videos to figure out how to do this thing, but I don't think it was only that, though. I think it is this, Herxheimer effect, Herxing. What that is that disease gets under attack, and it tries to flee away from whatever chemicals are attacking it, and it wants to go right through you, and that's very uncomfortable. As well as anything else associated with this thing, like parasites. They don't like to be under attack. So they start feeling those, molecules of, especially sulfur or anything, anything they don't like, they'll try to go right through you. And I found that in the beginning I had to drink alcohol. I don't do it anymore. I do anything I can to stay away from drinking. I haven't done it for years now, but I'm not saying for you to not do it. I don't recommend it, but maybe you would have to. I don't know. I did. Maybe you, especially in the beginning, that stuff hasn't been tamed as much yet. You might have to. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm going to say I don't recommend it. And so I'm going to put a link in my other video where I kind of forgot about it, that I had to do that. But so what it does is, that stuff comes under attack. The booze, the alcohol, tends to kind of put it back to sleep. And so it's easier for you to take. It also kind of kills some pain. Alcohol is good for that. But it also puts those, parasites, microbes, whatever it is, to sleep. And so you feel it less. But I would not get in love with alcohol if you want to live. You just want to, I'm not going to tell you not to do it because I did it, and maybe it is necessary, and especially more in the beginning. I just don't know. I don't know because I don't do it that way anymore. I don't do the... In my opinion now, that's not the way to do it. I've tried it. It did not work. So use your own judgment. I would, if I was you though, I would definitely try to stay away from it as much as possible. But I use it quite a bit. You know, it was so miserable in the beginning that, you know, but I knew it was killing me. You know, I really didn't want to do it, but I had to do it, and so I did it, and so I don't know what to tell you. You know, I don't use it that way anymore, so I'm not sure if you're going to need it or not, but just keep that kind of in mind there. So I'm on with my regular video here. If I can keep, you know, win this electronic war, apparently, then I'm having a fight with these people. Here's an implementation that I kind of came up with. I used just one of a bar of soap. I drilled a hole right through the middle of it. I put it on a wooden spoon. You know, I wired it on. Just I've got some real pretty stiff wire here. It's kind of plastic coated. Just wired on the back of the spoon. You know, I drilled a couple of holes through the spoon right here on the side, and a hole right through the middle of the soap, and just wire it on there. It works great. It holds it on there. Right now, I don't even use this with. I used to use it with, you know, put some cream on there. You can do your back. And I don't even do that. You know, I'm getting better and better, so I just do it kind of dry now. I think there's a problem. I'll rub it every once in a while with just dry, and I think that kind of gets enough sulfur on there. And that's really, this kind of fits in with my next a tip for you, is to sleep only on your back, and maybe even inclined. That seems to have worked for me. You know, you really don't want a lesion starting on your back. That's the last place that you'd want it. It's hard to get to. So I've had great luck sleeping on my back. That's what I recommend. Maybe, you know, maybe you want to go out and get like a bed wedge pillow. This sulfur soap kind of sometimes gives you like some heartburn. You know, maybe some antacids every once in a while. Might not be a bad idea either. I do that every once in a while. I try to not do anything else. You know, I try to only do the sulfur and not do other things. But every once in a while, you gotta, you know, you have to kind of go with the flow and help yourself out. So another thing is, don't wear contact lenses, you know, unless you absolutely have to. I have them on right now to do this video, but I normally wear glasses around the house here or whatever, because sometimes, you know, you're going to want to kind of rub around your eyes. You kind of have to kind of keep that stuff going through there, and you want to kind of take it out of your eyes if you can. And so that's hard to do with contacts on it. You know, I'm sure some of you will not need to, you know, have LASIK or something. You don't even need to worry about this. But for the ones that wear contacts, you might want to mostly wear glasses just so you can rub around your eyes. Another thing is, don't remove any teeth unless you absolutely know for sure that you have to, because the sulfur soap, if you start driving it in, you think you have a problem like with your teeth somewhere, the sulfur soap's great, man. It will take that, it will drive that disease away from there. Might even, you know, reverse the damage and the decay. And I wouldn't be surprised if your teeth or your bones, whatever, start regenerating. You know, the sulfur works very good at stuff like that. So, you know, that's what I recommend. Don't remove your teeth unless you absolutely know you can't win that war. About my shaved head. I like hair. I like to have a head of hair. I have a nice head of hair, but I haven't had it for years, solely for the reason of I don't want extra sulfur soap getting, you know, if you have hair and you go to, so you have to infuse it in your head sometimes, you know, on the top up there, it's going to rub off onto those hair shafts, and you know, when you go out and exercise, then it's going to flow back. You know, you start sweating, it's going to flow back on you just more. That's the only reason I don't do it. I'd rather have hair. I like my hair, but I haven't had it just to keep the amount of sulfur soap down to the bare minimums. In the same vein, and I don't know if I've said this before on my videos, but I wear latex gloves for the same reason. Just when I do the, you know, just while I'm doing the infusion, just to keep the soap from the bar of soap from getting into my hands. I don't want any extra. That's why I do those things. Some of you guys, you know, and gals especially, you're going to want to keep your hair, and I don't blame you. And so maybe you can get away with it. You know, it's up to you. You're going to have to balance, you know, figure out if it's worth it to you or not, and maybe, you know, just part it and put it in there, and then wipe as much off with a hand towel or whatever as you can, and maybe you can keep your hair. It's up to you. You know, maybe I've seen creative haircuts that would probably work. You know, where some areas are shaved and other areas have the long hair, and you can put it in there and then pull the long hair back over it, and you got the best of both worlds. You know, maybe, you know, maybe wigs will make a comeback or something. I don't know. Maybe they never did go away too much, but and I kind of always harp on this, but I'm sure I've said it a bunch of times before. You definitely want to do the infusions just before you go out and exercising. Just before you go out and exercise, because, you know, if you rub and you're not going to go exercise, especially the more you get into it, you got that sulfur in there, and it comes right back out and gets into your bloodstream again, and it gets harder for you. So the best time, you know, you might want to schedule it, a half an hour. Rub, you know, move the stuff. Try to move it around and get it, you know, do the rubbing, any kind of rubbing. Now I do it all the time, but I found that it's tougher. It's way tougher because that stuff kind of starts coming back out into you, and it makes, you know, you really don't want that. And about the exercise, what kind of, I found that this is not the way I like to exercise. I like doing something else. I like playing basketball. I found that I can do that and I don't feel the pain, but I don't do that anymore because this disease is really kind of attacks your joints, and I want to be able to walk later, you know, when I get older. So I've figured out that, hey, you know, and this is not one of my most favorite things to do, but I've found out that the best thing probably for this, the way I do this treatment, is a bicycle. And so I went out and bought a cheap bike, and I think I paid like, you know, less than $100 for like $70 for this bike. I bought it new, and you know, but I can fix them. You know, I think that's maybe what you might want to try to think about doing in the beginning until you can find a better way. I'm sure this is not going to work for everybody. You know, maybe you're younger, it's not going to bother you as much. If you're a lighter case, you can go out and jog or something, whatever you're going to do to get your cardio in. But that's what I do. And so you might want to, you know, find a place to ride. Just go there at first and do the same place over and over until you can find a better place, and then you know, get some tools together and some parts, and you know, maybe become a bike tech or something. That's what I recommend. So these are just general recommendations to kind of get you started, give you a baseline to go on. I don't want to force anybody to do anything. That, you know, if you think you're going to find a better way, you know, more power to you. I just found, you know, what works for me, and I think in general it's going to be a pretty good starting place. So that's why I'm kind of, you know, telling you what I do. But and here's a very positive thing about using the sulfur infusions, you know, the sulfur soap. And I've done the research on this, and it really seems to me to be true. And then that is that the sulfur is excellent at the prevention and the recovery from the effects of the sun. It really seems true to me. You know, I can go out there now in broad daylight, a few hours, where before I would be red, now it's like I'm impervious to the sun. So that's a great positive thing about using the sulfur. And also, and I'm going to say this again at the end of my video, but you know, the disease is definitely worse in the beginning, and so with repeated use of the sulfur infusion, you just slowly get better. So I think the rest of this video is going to be about using too much. It's very hard a lot of times to realize that you're using too much sulfur. It's tricky, man. It kind of, you know, it wants to trick you, and you start feeling good. You're like, oh wow, man, this stuff's really is working. You know, I'm feeling great, no problem. Until you drink enough water, or go to do some exercise too, or both. You can't tell. You got too much. You're using too much. You'll drink a whole bunch of water, then you'll know. Oh my God, I'm really dehydrated. You don't want to. It's very difficult to realize. So just, you know, just watch it, man. It's tricky. If your tongue starts kind of tingling and you start getting maybe some pins and needles, I don't know, this is going to happen to everybody, but I'd say you're using too much. If your urine flow slows down, you're using too much. If you get cramps, you probably want to cut back and figure out what's going on. Are you too dehydrated? That can cause cramps. Are you drinking so much water that it's flushing the minerals through you? You know, that can cause cramps. Maybe if you're using too much sulfur, that can cause that. I used to get cramps. I don't get them anymore. I'm still not taking the supplementation with multivitamins. I do recommend that, but I found that I don't have to do it, and I don't get cramps anymore. I think I'm just better at doing what I have to do. Another thing, another way to tell if you're using too much is if you can't get anything done. You know, you get too lethargic. You just don't want to do anything. Maybe you lay down on the couch and you go to sleep for an hour or two. You're too saturated. You got too much in you, and it gets harder. The farther along you get more saturated with the stuff. It gets, you know, through the capillary action, it penetrates, and you get more saturated, and that happens to you more. So you got to kind of take more breaks then. The farther you get into it, it's the nice thing about it is you don't have to use it as much. Your levels are higher. It's getting saturated. You definitely want to use the least amount possible. In one of my earlier videos, I referenced kind of a glop, you know, kind of a pea-sized glop. I don't use that much anymore. The more you go into it, the more kind of saturated you get. I just use the least amount, and you might want to do this in the beginning too. I don't know. I think you can, you know, use more in the beginning because you want to get that stuff in there. But I might even recommend this for you guys that are just starting out. Use the least amount possible that'll make it slide, and you can kind of hit a spot, you know, right here or wherever, your foot, top of your foot. Just use enough just to make it slide. Anything more, I think you might be overdoing it. Anything less, it's going to catch. It's not going to work very good. So keep that in mind. Another thing is, don't be afraid to stop this treatment, you know, and take a break. Especially if you feel like you might have too much, and you kind of want to maybe do this anyway, just to kind of test it. Stop it. You know, you can't do this as much in the beginning. This is more for down the line, but you know, stop the treatment for a couple days, you know, in the beginning, maybe later on, 5 or 10 days even, you know. And just as a matter of course, every once in a while. In the beginning, it's tough, man. You're going to, you know, hey, I need to use it again. You feel it. And so, but, you know, that's a positive thing to look forward to. The farther you get into this, you're going to be able to start taking breaks down the road. More difficult at first, but so don't be afraid to stop, especially later on in treatments. And another thing I want to, you know, this is kind of unrelated, but in my last tips and techniques video, tips and techniques number 3, I referenced something, and I called this thing, I called it sulfur soap disease. It's not a real disease. It's just me coming up with something, and, you know, to where if I think I'm using too much sulfur soap, I say that I have sulfur soap disease. You know, it's not a real disease. It'll resolve. Just stop using the sulfur soap for a little while, and this just kind of, you know, don't worry about that. It's not a real disease. It will resolve itself with you know, discontinued use. But so for the end of this video, I just want to, you know, give a little bit more advice, and that is that it's a tough treatment, and so what you really need to do is you need to do the work if you can in order for this to work. You just can't be lazy. You're not always going to be able to do everything you want to do. It kind of slows you down. It really makes it hard to do things. You know, you want to rest. But you have to do as much as you possibly can for this to work. You just can't be lazy. If you're a lazy person, I don't think this is going to work for you. You know, you're always kind of working, you're always kind of moving. It's tough. But another thing is, you know, definitely don't panic. That doesn't help anything. You know, and I think if you decide to do this treatment, you know, again, I said it before, I'll say it again, every time you infuse the sulfur, you're a little bit better than you were before. And so I think if you take some of these ideas, and if you do decide to try this treatment, You know, eventually you can become successful with it, and maybe, you know, get your life back someday. So until next time.